Now let's talk more about the government's controversial high-speed railway link, HS2. It's emerged that the cost of Phase 2, which is the part which comes through the East Midlands, has jumped by 39%. That's according to a Freedom of Information FOI request made by the Stop HS2 campaign. It was also confirmed last month that the actual route won't be finalised until late next year, so people living in places like Long Eaton will have to wait even longer to find out how they're affected. Joe Rukin is the Stop HS2 campaign manager. He joins you now. Good evening.
Good evening.
What's your reaction to this 39% extra cost for the line?
Well, we're really surprised at this because the cost of HS2 was increased in November, and we were told by the government it was purely to account for inflation because they'd been working on 2011 prices and it was just bringing up to 2015. But the figures didn't quite add up, so we put in this Freedom of Information request, and 39% increase on the construction cost of Phase 2, is absolutely unbelievable. And the other thing that's unbelievable with that is that to try and keep the number down, they've cut the contingency figure. Now, bearing in mind that we haven't got a route, we're not even sure if the route as proposed is practical. How they've managed to cut the contingency is beyond us. And of course, the other thing they've done is they've cut the price. They've actually cut the overall price of the rolling stock, which, as there's been no tendering or, even a design spec done so far, how they can cut the price of the trains, we have no idea, especially when rolling stock procurement quite often goes over budget.
What is it, though, in monetary terms, 39%? How much money are we talking?
Change is £4.9 billion. Gone from 12.5 to 17.4,
right.
So almost £5 billion.
Nearly £5 billion. It's a lot of money.
The cost of Phase 2, and that's a hell of a lot of money, especially when you're looking at cuts elsewhere across the network.
It is a lot of money, but it's not unusual, is it, for very large transport infrastructure projects like this to go over budget in that way? In fact, it's the norm, I would say.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, that the official cost of HS2 is £56 billion as things stand, but we could easily see it hitting three figures in terms of billions by the time it's actually built, because there's so much that doesn't seem to be right. For example, the proposed route through the East Midlands, we simply don't believe that it's doable, which is one of the reasons, obviously, the consultation on the route finished over 2 years ago now, and we haven't actually got the route published. One of the reasons we think that's happened is because there's so much mining subsidence in the area that we're not sure this route can be done. If you were building a road or a normal railway, you could handle a bit of subsidence. The classic example is the A42 extension, where it started subsiding almost as soon as it was built. You drive on it now, you still feel bumping up and down in some places.
Okay.
You can do that with a road or a normal railway. You do that with a 225-mile-an-hour train, and you get a little bit of subsidence. The thing's coming off the track, and this is one of the reasons we think that it's been delayed so much, because they simply cannot go with the route that's been proposed.
You want to stop it, but there's an argument that it will create more wealth, certainly more employment, and then sustain jobs in Derbyshire.
Oh, absolutely not. You look at all the international evidence, and what you find is, besides some of the outlying areas that are served by the stations having more commuters, so more housing built in the green belt between Nottingham and Derby in this case, you find that all the economic activity gets sucked to the most dominant economy on the railway line, i.e. London.
But they have said that they will employ local people to man the new stations to help electrify the line.
Well, in terms of manning the stations, you absolutely hope that the people who are doing the jobs there are locals who are not being brought in, but there's not much else.
There's the construction of it.
Well, yeah, but this is the thing. You look at the construction of Crossrail. If you're working for Transport for London, you're probably a Londoner. But if you're working for Crossrail Limited, you're almost certainly a foreign worker who's been brought in. And, Crossrail will finish, HS2 will come along. It's quite likely that the people who are currently building Crossrail will go on to building HS2. And we've seen this, Alstom, for example, they were touted as potential bidders for the rolling stock. They're a great example of this, because in 2009, when they were building, a power station in Nottingham, they specifically had subcontractors who were told not to employ British workers and to bring them in from overseas.
To save money.
Yeah, exactly, to save money.
That was what was thought to be the situation, I know. Just finally, I mentioned residents in Long Eaton. There's lots I'd like to say about this, but we're a little limited for time. Residents in Long Eaton, they're still waiting to hear how they're going to be affected, aren't they, by these changes?
Absolutely. We've no idea how long it's going to take for the government to actually come up with a route. The consultation finished 2 years ago. We were promised it would be reported on in autumn 2014. Then it was autumn 2015. Now it's autumn 2016. So almost 3 years after the consultation took place, you might find out what's happening. But I wouldn't hold my breath if I were you. I think there'll be after the Phase 1 bill, if it's passed soon, I think there may then be some big changes about Phase 2, because obviously the government said that they want to fast-track the western section to Crewe, and we could see that if HS2 does get built, it only ever gets as far as Crewe, because that's on that side where the geological problems start happening, and the east side is full of geological problems.
All right. Many aspects to this argument, one which is going to go on and on and on, I'm afraid. No doubt you'll still keep fighting for your cause tenaciously. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.